Okay. Well, let's have a word of prayer and we'll start. Again, Father, we thank you for the indwelling presence of your Holy Spirit. Thank you for his ministry in our lives. And as we study the language of the New Testament, we ask him to enable us to comprehend it, understand it, and then be faithful and diligent to discipline ourselves to study it. So we yield our minds, our lives, and understanding to his ministry and his leadership. In the precious name of Christ we pray. Amen. Well, we were on the middle in passive voice. Well, let me remind you of present indicative active. Remember, voice has to do with the action in relationship to the subject. So let me just take this one. Luo, and one thing I didn't emphasize last week, in English, if I wrote down I loose, I'd have I and then the verb loose, but the pronoun is on the end. I mean the person is on the end. I loose. I, you, he, she, it. So you don't, if I asked you to translate that, it would be I loose. And then you put down you loose. And then he, she, or it looses. So in one word, you have the person and the verb, and on the same thing on the plural.
And this is passive, present?
No, this is active.
Active, present.
Yeah, present active,
Okay.
indicative.
I there.
Ice, yeah. Say it in Greek, Josh.
Ice.
No, well, what? If I ask you to, what are the letters? The alphabet.
Sigma, iota.
You're going backwards.
Oh.
What's this? Epsilon, iota, sigma. Just learn to think Greek. Then on the plural side, omen, eti, usi. Remember, you put, and you've got we loose, you loose. If I had the adding the letters then. And sometimes there is this movable new on it. So that's we loose, you, which is plural, and they loose. So if I ask you to take one of the verbs you've learned in your vocabulary and parse it in present indicative active, this is what you'd put in singular and plural. This is what you'd put down. A kuo, a ku ice, a ku I, a ku omen, a ku eti. I hear, a kuo.
So you eti would be the same thing as blue ice?
But it's plural, Josh.
Oh, okay.
See, that's how you would tell whether it's the person is plural or singular.
So blue ice is middle active?
No, this is active, present indicative active. These are the basic endings for present indicative active. You take the verb that you learn in your vocabulary is always first person singular present indicative active. You take the omega off and you have the stem and you add the other endings, singular and plural, and you've parsed that verb. I loose, you loose, he, she, it looses. And you do that for all of the verbs you're learning in your vocabulary.
So regularly when we find a list of verbs, not only in the book but in other places, they will end with the
I guess I understand what you're saying. If you find a list of a vocabulary verbs,
will have that in.
Yes.
They'll be like.
Well, I say yes. There are exceptions, but I don't want to go there and get everybody more confused. But most of the time, it's this.
And from there, we can work.
Yes. Yeah. So what you're learning in the textbook in your vocabulary is always present indicative active first person singular. Akuo, ego.
That's cool.
Yeah. And remember that the endings give you the person, singular or plural. I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they. See, in English we don't have but one word for you, but in Greek you would know this is different. If it had this in it, it would be plural. So let me, I was going to give you an exercise to do, and then I was looking over it and realized that some of these words you haven't had. That wouldn't be fair to you, would it? Let me write some up here and you see if you can translate it. I think I remember what you've had in your vocabulary. And if you hadn't, just tell me. I didn't. Pardon?
Isn't it he, she, or it?
Yep. What's the verb? Has, yes. Echo. You know, in the I think you've had this one, hadn't you?
Yes, we have.
I made that like an X instead of the curve. Echo, I have. And then I is third person singular. He, she, it has. Mm-hmm. So, and put another one up here. Akuais. Akuo is here. So what person is that?
You here?
Okay. O, I's, I. The endings, just learn those. O, I's, I, those are singular endings. Omaneti, usi are plural endings. And you take the verb, the stem, and add the ending. That's why I've emphasized first day it's important to learn that vocabulary so you can recognize the words when you see them.
You hear.
Mm-hmm. You hear. Well, let me put another one up here. If you can read my writing, I know sometimes it's hard. Blaipusi. See? Yeah. Blepo is I see. Now this is the third person plural ending. So they see. Now sometimes in the Greek New Testament you'll remember this movable nu may be on there. It doesn't change the person or the meaning. If the next letter after blepusi started with a vowel, usually they put that in there to break it off. Don't get confused about that. It seems like y'all pretty much have it. Again, that's why you need to be sure you got your vocabulary down so you can recognize these words when you see them.
And those 6 endings, that's the only, those combination of letters are the only, let me try to go back a little bit. You won't find another word with those endings that mean something different?
No, these are present indicative active endings.
There's not another word with that ending that will mean, instead of person, it will end.
No, whatever verb you find, Daniel, with these endings on it, whichever one, that does.
Is it only with verbs?
On these endings, yes. I hadn't got to nouns yet. I don't want to confuse you and move.
Only verb endings.
These are present indicative active verb endings here. O, I, si, omen, eti, usi. So take whatever verb in your vocabulary, and you can find the stem by taking the omega off and add the endings to it.
The nouns and the verbs have 2 different.
Yes, the nouns, I don't want to run too fast, Josh. We'll all be confused by then. I was going to try to get to nouns today, but we may not. I want to make sure you get this. I probably was moving too fast last week going from active to middle and passive, but just take the verbs that you've learned in the 2 chapters in vocabulary verbs and you add the endings to them. Take the omega off and you have the stem. And then you add the endings. And I think there's probably some, I usually don't, I'm not going by the book, but I know he has some okay, look on page 13 in your textbook, and he's got the exercises down below. And he gives you verbs with the endings, and just translate them. A guy, and number 1, a guy is pardon? Okay, to lead or to go. You can have both meanings, and again, sometimes it would be the context will tell you which one to use. So a guy would be he leads. A kui, okay, he hears. Blepai, ekai, he has. Okay.
The pronunciation from the EI's I.
O, ice, I. Ice is first person singular, second person singular. I is third person singular.
Just dealing with the pronunciation.
Yes.
The sound. Okay. I.
And you could take these exercises at the end of that chapter and locate the verbs. Yeah. Tell me what they are. I'm not sure we've got the endings. O, I, si, omen, eti, usi. That's first person. First, second, third person singular, first, second, third person plural. Those are the endings, and you add that to the verb, and then you can translate it. And the person that you, whether it's I, you, he, she, or it, is in the ending. In English or Spanish, I guess you would add I, and then C. But when I see this like this written in the Greek text, there's no he out there in front of it. The he is right here. I learned that endings, and I know what that is. That's third person singular.
In Spanish, even when we have the nouns, we can avoid the nouns and just the ending of
Okay.
or I or we.
Well, Eric said it was very similar to. Y'all are way ahead, I guess. Way ahead of me because I don't know Spanish. That's right. Any question about present indicative active? You take the vocabulary words you're learning and add the endings first, second, and third person, singular or plural. Remember, present tense is linear action, continuous action. And you'll notice in the book on his illustration with loose, I am loosing, which is the same way. That gives it a little clearer picture. I am at the present time loosing, or you can just translate it, I loose. And I don't mind slowing down. I want to make sure we get it. You know, the best way to learn this, for me, was just to write it down on paper over and over and over again. Take the verbs and go through, parse them. First, second, third person singular, and first, second, third person plural. So you can see it. When you see it, you recognize it. Okay. Any question about present indicative active? Remember, the voice determines the relations of the subject to the action. Active voice, subjects doing the acting. Passive voice, the subjects being acted on. But the Greek has that third voice, middle, where you do something to yourself. I hit myself with the ball, or somehow I'm related to that action in doing it to myself. And that's where we left off last week. We were looking at the endings for middle and passive. And the good news about that, they're the same endings, middle and passive endings. You don't have to learn but one set of endings for those two, middle or passive. And the context of the sentence will tell you whether it's passive or middle. So again, you take the verb. Let's just stay with luo. This is first person singular, present indicative active. I'm taking the stem off. The omega off and finding the stem. And to the stem, I'm going to add the endings of the middle and passive voice. And middle and passive voice have the same endings, present tense. So you, again, just learn one set of endings. And I think this is probably my, sa, ta. This is singular. I, you, he, she, it. Let me start with the singular for a minute. The difference with this one in the middle and passive voice is you take the stem, these are the endings, but there will be a connecting vowel in between. It will either be the omicron or the upsilon, or epsilon. It'll either be this one or this one. So, you will add the omicron before a mu or nu. I think I went over that with you. So this one is what? Mu. Luomai. You add the omicron before a mu, a nu, anything else, you'd add the epsilon.
Okay, let me go back. Without that connecting vowel is the singular form. Am I right now?
No, both plural and singular, Daniel. I hadn't got over to the plural yet. These are the singular endings of middle and passive. My, si, tai, and you're going to add that connecting vowel, the omicron before the mu or the nu, and the epsilon before any other letter. So, you have first person singular luomai. Middle or passive. So if I said I am being loosed, what would that be? I am being loosed. Is that middle or passive? Passive. Passive means the subject's being acted upon. If middle would be I loose myself. I'm doing this to myself.
The O. Tell me again when to put the O.
You put the omicron before a mu or a nu. These are the singular endings, my, si, tai. So this would be the omicron. This is a my. This is a tau. So this is epsilon. Now here's where, if it was following this, that's why I told you there always seems to be something in. Following this rule, omicron and epsilon, what would normally go here with psi? Pardon? Epsilon. But over the course of time, and again, there's no, how this all occurred, don't know. The sigma was lost in somewhere along the way. So it became this. The sigma dropped out. And now you've got a vowel and a diphthong together. And the ending becomes this. I know that's confusing. And don't ask me why that happened. Somewhere along the line in translation, the sigma was lost. And the epsilon and the alpha iota contracted together until you came up with the eta and the subscript underneath it. So when you're looking at middle and passive, the second person singular will be this form right here.
So you don't find it like that?
No.
Okay.
No. I was just showing you, according to the rules of putting the epsilon and the omicron, this would have been epsilon here because this is not a mu or nu. But over a course of time, sigma dropped out for some reason, and these two contracted together, and it became the eta subscript. Huh? No, it'll be written like this. In the Greek, it'll be written like this.
But in Greek, you would say it the same as you would say it.
No, you just pronounce it like this, Josh. Lua. Lu. This is eta with the subscript. Lua. Mm-hmm. No, eta is a long E. Epsilon is a short E. And my pronunciation, we don't know how it was all pronounced. I told you that first. So.
And the AI is included when you say it, right?
Yes. These two contracted together. The epsilon and the diphthong A, alpha iota contracted, and it became this.
So what about when you're saying tie? Would it be the same thing?
No. This is luatai. This is the only one that contracted. The sigma dropped out. The rest of them stay in place.
Oh, okay.
Luomai, lue, luatai. This is either middle or passive, and the context will have to tell you which one it is. That's singular. Hadn't got to the plural yet. Any question? I don't want to run too fast. Remember, the middle voice represents the subject acting in reference to himself or herself. Passive means the subject's being acted upon.
So, in that ending, that the second one, the side, okay. That's actually we're not using never that ending. In any verb.
No, just this one. Just this one.
So you just explained how we get.
Yes, I was just explaining to you how it became. I could have just put it up there like that, but I was trying to explain to you how it, over the course of time, that sigma dropped out.
So we need to. So there are three endings. That
So-
would be my, size.
Yeah, and this is the one that contracted. So when you're learning the endings, it's going to be this instead of this.
But pronounced the same.
Lue. It won't be luosai, but that contracted. That.
But it will be luatai.
Yes, the rest of them will be the same.
Just that one.
Just that second person singular, that one dropped out, sigma dropped out over time. Right? So if this, let's say this luomai is middle, it would be I wash myself. Or if it was passive, I am being washed. The context is going to have to tell you which one it is, whether to translate it middle or passive. Okay.
So what are the different indications of my, Sai, and Tai again? My is
That's first person, second person, third person. This is first person singular, right here. Second person singular and third person singular. I haven't got to the plural yet. So I, you, he, she, or it. In the middle are passive voice, and again they have the same endings.
So the two meanings, luomai will be I being washed.
I am being washed, or I wash myself, depending on which, what the context tell you in a sentence. Now that's just the singular. I hadn't got to the plural endings yet. And I don't hesitate to tell me I'm not clear about this. I don't want to.
so O in a word ending with O with omega is always referring to yourself. I loose.
Yes. That's the first person singular that you're learning in your vocabulary, present indicative active.
And that goes for plural as well as singular? Or
The only thing you're learning in the vocabulary, Josh, is singular.
oh, okay.
So you add the other endings to get to the plural end of it.
Gotcha. I see it again.
Any question about the singular before I move on to the plural? And the same thing applies over here on plural, whether it's Omicron or epsilon. Here the plural endings, and you're going to add this connecting vowel depending on what the ending starts with. So, Hunter, did you go over anything? from last week? Did anybody show you that?
Yeah, Woody gave me a brief overview.
Okay, this is first person plural, the ending for middle or passive, metha. According to that rule, what would be the connecting vowel? Omicron. So it would be luometha. We are being washed, or we wash ourselves. This is first person plural ending, metha. And I'm adding that connecting vowel to the stem. The second person, wait, before I go any further, I will make sure everybody's got that first person plural. All right, Estes is second person plural. According to the rule, the connecting vowel would be what?
What is metha?
We. Epsilon. We. This is first person plural meaning. Luometha. We loose. We wash, or we are being washed.
So this verb is for loose and wash?
Metha, what does metha mean?
Metha, I'm sorry, Dan. Metha is the first person singular. First person plural. I'm sorry, I didn't mean wash. Loose. I am loosing myself, or I am being loosed. Metha is the first person plural ending for middle or passive.
So luo is the loose part.
Luo, I loose. So if I gave you a verb on a test and I said, take a kuo and give me the present indicative active and present middle passive endings, then you would take that verb all the way through. Oi, sai, omaneti, usi for present indicative active. Then middle and passive, you'd have the same endings. My, sai, tai, metha, estha, and I hadn't got to the third person plural. Okay. So here, before any other letter, it would be this, epsilon. And the third person plural is entai. So what connecting vowel will go here? No, omicron. Omicron, before a mu or a nu, omicron.
So that's Isa.
Well, if you, what, this is plural, Josh. Metha, ometha, estha, ontai.
And that Esther is the second person plural.
Yes, second person plural.
Ontai is
Third person plural. First, second, third person plural. Middle or passive.
I just didn't see it in the book, so.
Let me give you why this becomes an interesting thing. For instance, today one of the big issues is tongues. Speaking in tongues. In 1 Corinthians 13:8, Paul said, if knowledge will come to an end, but when he comes to tongues, he says, in and of themselves they will cease. It's a middle voice. So something was going to happen in and of itself to stop the tongues. And when I realize that, then that takes on a whole different meaning. So I know that. That's why it's important to determine the context and whether the verb's middle or passive. I shouldn't throw those things out there. We had got this. It's just important to help clarify the meanings. So this is middle or passive endings. I'm just abbreviating. Just remember you take the stem. Let's just use a kui. We've been using that one. A kuo is first person singular, present indicative active. And I carried that all the way through. A kuo, ice, I. I hear, you hear, he, she, or it hears. Now if I'm going to get into middle or passive, I'm going to add those endings. It would be a ku. What would be the ending? Okay. A kuomai. Add that connecting vowel, you get the stem and add the vowel. Remember this contracted, so that's how that would be written.
Okay, so how do you say that ending? Because I learned it as sigh, and now I feel wrong.
Well, I gave that way to you, so I knew that. I could have just given you the eta subscript.
So it's eta?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a long E. So it'd be a kui. Instead of a kuosai, it would be a kui because it contracted. And
How did you say that part? That one part.
do what?
Just the ending part. How do I say just the ending?
That's eta is a long E.
Okay.
A kui instead of a kuosai, that just contracted down, and I know that's confusing, but this is the form you're going to find in the Greek New Testament with the eta subscript under it, and you'll know when you see that you're in either middle or passive.
Where's that in the book? Do you know?
Middle or passive? I'm not sure what page that's on, Josh. It probably skips over to another part. It's over here on page, it's lesson 11. It's on page 49, present, middle, and passive. I skipped over those chapters to get us all at one time. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking when I started that. If you'll look at lesson 11, he gives you explanation of middle and passive, present, middle, and passive, and gives you the endings. Yeah. Now, what we are learning in here is just basic stuff, and then you will discover, and before we end up, I'll bring you a text. There are books on syntax that you can get that would help you. Always, there's sometimes a little extra meaning to it. I'm just giving us the simple meanings. Any question before we go on? It seemed like y'all are picking it up. I know that's confusing. That
last one is
on tie.
on
What here?
Yeah.
Yeah. On tie. Lu on tie. They're loosing themselves if it's middle.
or?
The context will have to tell you, Josh.
Okay, because they're spelled, it's
It,
spelled the same.
it's all the same form. You just have to determine from the context of the verse whether it's middle or passive.
So you would add the luo, so it would be luo on time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just put the endings up here, Hunter. It would be lu on tie. Or whatever verb you are dealing with. Well, let me put one up here you haven't had, but see if you can figure it, and I'll tell you what the verb means. Pistuo. According to this ending, what is this? First person singular, present indicative active. This is the verb for believe. So this would be translated, I believe. So when you find that form in the Greek New Testament, whatever verses you're studying, you would know that is I believe.
How do you say that again?
Pistuo.
So in Greek, I'm sorry, I might be asking a question you might answer.
No, it's all right. You weren't here last week, Hunter.
In Greek, so necessarily words don't make sounds. If they want to make the sound like TH, it's got to be theta and stuff
Mhm.
like that. Okay.
But you would pronounce it with our TH sound.
Yeah. But like what I was saying right there, so like the P wouldn't be silent since it's
No.
PS. Okay.
So, middle and passive are identical in form. You have to look at the context to determine whether it is to be middle or passive. And usually you can tell.
Also, faith has the same stem like pistil.
Yes, it's same. It basically is same from the same root, Eric. That's the noun form. Any question before I move on? Because I don't want us to be lost along the way. Don't hesitate to ask. Sometimes I can't tell by looking at you whether you got it or not.
So what you wrote over there is the same thing as what we were doing.
Well, yeah, I took a different verb, a kuo, I hear, and I carried it all the way through the singular present indicative active. If you were going to add the plurals ending, it would be omaneti usi. That's we hear. That's why I'm telling you it's important just to learn these endings, learn your vocabulary, learn these endings where we are right now, present, active, middle, and passive.
It's like eating an elephant.
Well, exactly. Yep. Anybody, any question? Daniel, do you think you could run? I didn't have enough to give this off. It's a two-sided piece of paper on verbs. That would help.
41?
And y'all can take that with you. I didn't get as far as I had intended to today. Huh? Well, yeah, I did run out of time, but I don't want to confuse you. I'm willing to slow down. Now, I'll wait till Daniel gets back to show you this stuff. So, if you don't have any question, next week, if you will, lesson 4 on nouns, and there are vocabulary words there to start learning. These are, and I'll explain this to you next week, these are called second declension nouns in the Greek, and for the most part, they're either masculine or neuter. Anthropos, I'm on page whatever that is, lesson 4, page 15. Anthropos, remember the omicron out there behind it is the definite article. Ho, anthropos. Ho, apostolos. Ho, artos. Doron is that's neuter, not masculine. Thanatos is death. Hieron is. And remember, when you see that rough breathing mark over the first vowel, has an H with it.
So neuter is...
It's neither masculine or feminine if it's neuter.
Like, give an example of a word that would be neither masculine.
Rock.
Rock?
It's neuter, isn't it? Now, there are exceptions to that in the Greek, and sometimes that sort of becomes confusion, but we'll go over that. Hieron, the word temple, notice it has a rough breathing mark over it. So if I ask you to transliterate that, it would be H in front of the Iron when you wrote it out. Kai is a conjunction, and it's an important conjunction. I'll go over that with you. Kurios is the word for Lord. Lithos is the word for stone. Nomos, law. Oikos is house. Aklos is crowd. And the last one is huios. There's a rough breathing mark over that second vowel. That's a diphthong. Huios is son. So that's the vocabulary. Just, begin putting that down on your cards and learning that. And then I'll show you next week how that works. How you see how the nouns are to be used and how they are used. Okay. If you have a question, I wish you'd ask it, because I want you to learn this. Although there's not going to be a great amount we'll have time to learn. Well, I took Greek I took it on campus. It was a year.
A year class?
I think it was a year. And beyond that, you can take exegesis classes where you just, once you learn the Greek, what you're learning here, they give you verses to exegete in class, and that's what you do.
That's really cool.
So here's when we get through, these are 2 books and I've got the simplest form of them. Some of them are more complicated. This is Thayer's Greek English Lexicon. This is the standard one, basic one. This gives you all of the root words, like ego or akuo.
And all of them ends on with omega.
Yes. Well, there are exceptions to that, Daniel, and in general, yes.
Okay.
This is an analytical Greek lexicon, and this identifies every word in the Greek New Testament. So you're reading along and you don't recognize that's not present indicative. I don't know exactly what that is. You go here and you look it up, and it'll tell you what it is, and then it'll give you the root word. And then you can take the root word and go back here, and it'll give you all the meanings in depth of what it is.
So this is a lexicon?
These are just basic and the most simple. There are some that are more intensive than this. But
What was that one? The new analytical
this is the New Analytical Greek Lexicon. You know, there are some more intense than that, and sometimes they're a little more complicated, but these two are very simple.
Who's the author on that one?
Oh, this one's by, I don't even know how you pronounce his work, but if you look up Analytical Lexicon, it'll give you choices. And most of the analyticals are have to be the same, because it takes every word in the Greek New Testament and identifies it for you.
This is back
Woody.
in lesson 1, but what is the difference between the two lowercase sigmas?
The difference? What did I do? If the sigma comes at the end, it's going to be written like this. If it's in the middle or starting a word, it's this. That's the only difference. It's the same letter. It's just changed forms depending on if it's at the end of the verb or the word. Excuse me. Yeah, I guess that's how you pronounce it. Sometimes up on East Kings Highway there is what is that store? Antique store. There's close to Strawn's. Yeah, sometimes they will have these books in here that are used. You can get them almost for nothing. Not every time, but sometimes. And there may not be anything left, but there is another one that, do you know where Wright Sound Gallery used to be on Uri Drive? And that went out of business. And the people came in there and they bought out Christian Life books and tapes. And they've got those books in there for sale. And I hadn't even been in there. I don't know. They may have some of this at a good price for you. That's a good way to build your library, is to find used books and start adding to it. Okay, well, we'll get to the nouns next week. Second declension nouns, and most of the nouns in the set, and I'll explain what declension and all that means. Most of these are either masculine or feminine. I mean neuter, masculine or neuter. You will?
I got myself in a little bit of a sticky situation. So.
Sticky?
Yeah. It's like a golden child at work, you know. And if I don't do what the golden child does, then the golden child's going to tell on me.
Oh.
And it's just a big deal, so I just succumb, you know.
I see.
But I'll just get your past lessons from Alejandro.
Well, it seems like you're picking it up pretty well, Hunter. So. Any other questions? I think y'all are doing well. Only way I'd know is to give you a test and see how you do.
Let's hold off on doing the test.
Well, you don't get no credit for it, Josh. You just find out how good you are.
You know, if you fail it, the only thing that's going to happen is just he's going to look at you differently.
Well, if you want to write down the names of these, I'll just leave. You can come by there and write them down if you want to. Oh, you're welcome. I want to make sure we get it, and then not only get it, but use it. Okay, well, I'll see.
More than a class grade.
What?
I said this counts for much more than a class grade.
Well, yeah, when you're not under that pressure of knowing you're getting a grade for it, that's okay. I'll see y'all next week then.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis.
You're welcome.